Third is setting a screen.
Because of physical play, although Jordan Taylor just got caught with a moving screen. Izzo dying for a moving screen.
It's that dreaded moving screen.
Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of the Moving Screen Podcast. I'm Brendan Quinn of The Athletic, here with Dylan Burkhart of Hoops. Dylan, what is happening, man?
It is cold, and it's rainy, it's dark all the time. College basketball is almost here. It seems like we should be talking about secret scrimmages or exhibition games, but we got a little extra weight this year.
You just brought a tear to my eye with the mention of secret scrimmages, man. I forgot that wonderful little world of making the random calls, getting this is the starting lineup in this scrimmage at Detroit Mercy last night.
We're left with a couple Zoom calls instead. I mean, that's the situation.
Are you enjoying the Zoom calls? We've had a few with both teams. You obviously haven't been on the MSU ones, but actually Tom Izzo's talking today at 12:45. But you've had, so for Michigan, let's see who's talked on Zoom. You've had Hunter Dickinson, Eli Brooks,
Franz Wagner, Austin Davis.
Did Isaiah talk to?
Isaiah.
Yeah, and then Juwan Howard. So are you okay with the virtual life so far on the beat?
Yeah, I think the hardest part is just the preseason is just not the same. Like usually by some point we get to see a little bit of even 20 minutes of practice or an exhibition game. It's going to be a real, for better or worse, you're going to learn a lot really quick in the first game on the day before Thanksgiving, right? So it's interesting to figure out what to really make of a preseason in such weird context, right? Like it's not like anyone's really preseason media availability in a previous world wasn't gonna rock your socks off either.
No doubt. I mean, I feel like we're missing out on a lot of stories for sure. You know, like we make fun of media day all the time, but at the same time, like you can get one-on-one time with players to actually have a 10-minute, real back and forth where you can kind of pick their brain a little bit on something in their personal life or something on the court with the team or whatever. And there's just like, it's totally devoid of that right now. It sucks. So
it is 2020. But hey, seems like we're moving toward a season here. We're
getting there and we're
a little less than a month to go. It just doesn't quite feel the same, I'd say right now.
No, I agree. And like even the fact that like Michigan State football is this weekend is completely weird. It feels like a very random major event that feels a lot smaller than normal. So we'll see. I mean, we are
less than a month out.
Yeah, 3-4 weeks here from opening day. We'll see what happens with the schedules. We'll see, what there is going to be more built-in leeway for things like cancellations and things like that. I'd encourage folks to listen to my other podcast from The Athletic. It's called The Beat that I do with Nick. But I talked to Kevin Palga because this is like a conversation that you and I here could sit here and talk about for an hour. But I thought KP did a really good job of kind of explaining in layman's terms of what is going into all this shit that is really complicated and difficult to maneuver. So check that out if anyone hasn't listened to it. But
it was really good. And the good thing about that is he actually knows what's going on compared to listening to us sit and ramble about it for an hour. So that's helpful.
Hugely important note there.
The biggest thing when I was listening to that pod, though, that stuck out to me was you can play a basketball game pretty easily. It's you got to get 30 guys in the same city, and then you can just go, right? So I think that you're going to have to see a lot more flexibility when games get canceled, and teams might play teams that aren't on the schedule. You might have backup scheduling agreements, like who knows what, but I think they're going to have the mindset of we need to get games in, let's just figure it out. And it's going to be unlike anything we've ever seen, I think. But that's way easier to do than football where you need a whole week to prep. You need this. I mean, yes. You can just go play a basketball game. I mean, it's not going to be ideal maybe, but if you're in East Lansing and you have a game canceled on Tuesday, why don't you just stay and play in Ann Arbor if they're playing the same team, right? There's all sorts of options like that you just don't have in football, which
for sure
they made that whole fancy schedule for football to accommodate some of that, but
Right.
Now we're stuck on 8 weeks or whatnot. So
Yeah.
basketball, you got to get games in. If you need to play 5 games in the last week of the season, like I think you can just do it, right? So it'll be interesting how that all goes. But
the snag, like it's one of those deals though, where it's on paper, it's easy to put together a basketball game, but obviously in the details is where it gets complicated, and things are going to catch snags on this idea of proportionate or equivalent testing procedures that like schools won't play other schools that don't have similar testing policies and all that shit. So like it's going to be a mess. Let's just hope that they get through the season and we can get to an NCAA tournament and put all this shit behind us and move forward. But I don't know. We're going to talk basketball today though, because we are 5 days from an election from hell. We are
2 weeks from the Masters.
2 weeks from the Masters. I'm still kind of consuming a lot of my time, but I'm looking to talk basketball. You're looking to talk basketball. So we're going to go through the top 25 list that you do annually with Alec Bozich from Inside the Hall. I feel like it's a great staple of the preseason in the Big Ten.
It is. Luckily, it's not a staple of the postseason to look back and see how awful our picks were the previous year. So that's good. We're holding on to that. We're trying to keep that under wraps.
Well, this year's list was published, a couple weeks back, but we haven't had a chance to go through it on this. So I don't think there'll be any changes. I don't think there's been any injuries. I think this pretty much stands up. So we're going to go through it. I got some takes for sure. I know you got some takes. So let's get right into it with the top. We're going to go top 10, right?
First, we'll start with the top 10.
So you guys, just so people understand, right? This was you and Alex. You guys both make your top 25 list, right? You combine them.
Yeah.
And then you like flesh it out from there.
Yeah. So we both do it blind and come up with our ranking. And then we put it together and see where we're off, where we're different, move people around as necessary. The back half gets really confusing because you're dealing with, you can't really average it out. So we actually do top 30 to start because you want to get a little bit of clarity about some of those back guys, but then it takes some shuffling around and whatever else. And then we debate it, come up with the list and give it out to the people, and they tell us we're a bunch of idiots. That's basically how it goes. Perfect.
So before I rattle these off, did you guys have like dramatic differences? Because it seems like there's a lot of parity in players in the league.
Yeah, the top 10 I think was pretty solid as far as like settling on who the top 10, 11, 12 players are in the league. Beyond there, it was just a mess. I think you can make a case for pretty much anyone. Like I think Ron Harper, we are way off on. I was higher on him. There's just a lot of guys anyone in that middle tier, I don't think you can really make a case. It's easy to drop in the 20s as it is to go into the teen, like the high teens. So
yeah.
Those were our biggest differences. Near the top 5 and the top of the list, we were really kind of dead on. 5 to 10, maybe a little more leeway. Micah Potter, Isaiah Livers were sort of in between guys who you could have some different takes on. But yeah, let's get into the list.
Okay, so here's the top 10 from you and Alex. Number 1, Luka Garza. Number 2, Ayo Dosunmu. Number 3, Trace Jackson Davis. Number 4, Kofi Coburn. Number 5, Franz Wagner. Almost said Mo. Number 6, Micah Potter. Number 7, Travion Williams. Number 8, Isaiah Livers. Number 9, Aaron Henry. Number 10, Joe Wieskamp from Iowa. So for our listeners, you got 2 Michigan players there. You got 1 Michigan State player. What to you, was there any question for you at number 1?
I was pretty much, I don't think you can argue with Luka's stats at this point. I don't love all the Iowa preseason hype. I appreciate people who have been courageous enough to point out that they don't play any defense online when everyone publishes a top 25 list that has Iowa like 3rd in the country. It wasn't a good team last year, even though they had a Luka Garza on that team. But I don't think you can really argue in the context of a list like this that Luka Garza needs to be number 1. His stats were just incredible last year. He's an incredible player as much as he just doesn't play much defense. So I don't think there was a debate there, really.
The one that kind of jumped out to me was Trace Jackson Davis at 3. And it's not that I have, I'm not in any way questioning his talent. Like, I think he's a total stud and all that. But it's like going from, what was he, honorable mention all league last year, I believe, to being the number 3 player in the conference is like just a massive jump. Like, do you think he's really the third? Will he be the third most impactful player in the league this year? Or is he the third most talented player in the league, or like the most upside, whatever?
Yeah, well, he's probably even higher than that if you're just going by upside. I think you look at a freshman to sophomore leap, that's where you look for someone to really take the next level. And he was really damn good as a freshman. I mean, he was efficient. I just think he can only go up. And Indiana, I think you probably say, will be somewhat better this year, right? And I think he's going to be at the focal point of that. And really, who are you going to put ahead of him? I mean, is Kofi Coburn? Who would you rather have at center on your team, Kofi Coburn or Trace Jackson Davis? So I see what you're saying, but I think you have to lean into the talent of the situation and say, this guy is going to get only better. He's a potential first-round pick. I don't know how you can really argue against him this high on the list. No,
I agree. And he's interesting in that he's like kind of, am I crazy or is he kind of under like the radar in turn? Like, I don't hear that much about him nationally. I don't hear, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
What is the deal with you guys had a great stat about his usage numbers. I think it was like 21% or something like that. Which was behind every notable big man in the league, you said. And so like, how much of it is the system? How much of it is the talent around him? Like, he should be a bigger deal probably, right?
Well, the good news is Devontae Green is gone. So that's more possessions for everyone. So there's the first step in the right direction. As far as not getting a bunch of national hype, I think part of that is just hesitation to buy into maybe what this Indiana team is going to be. I've been out in front on Indiana in the preseason. It doesn't always end well. So I wouldn't recommend that necessarily. But the fact that team was such a mess and he was really the only good player, if you assume that the people around, like offensively, he was the only efficient offensive player on a crappy offensive team. If you assume everyone else around him gets 10% better offensively, he should only thrive off that, I'd say. So I do think you see his usage click up. I think that he can only go in the right direction from here. So I'm in on Trace Jackson Davis. I think he projects to be a first-team All-Big Ten player. I think you look at Kofi Coburn and
the cops are coming from Indiana to make sure you stop with the hype and not derail their season again.
We got ambulances flying by left and right here, but Coburn is the more interesting one to me, where I'm not really sure he has the same ceiling maybe as Trace Jackson Davis. Like, there's a world where Trace Jackson Davis is maybe the best player in the Big Ten. I'm not sure there is one where Kofi Coburn is. Does that make sense?
It does. But Coburn is. You saw the difference that he made at Illinois last year. Just his, there was very little difference. It was just add Kofi Coburn, and suddenly it was a very different team. He's just, his presence on the court. He's just a total game changer. Physically, everything he can do is rebounding. I think he's a no-brainer to be a top 5 guy. And the same argument you would make with Trace, you make with Kofi. Who are you putting above him logically? The only guy in the top 10 that I'm like kind of right, just underwhelmed by is probably Travion Williams. And I get it. He's just kind of like that garbage man, rebound. His game is what it is. He is what he is physically.
He can score in the post now.
But at the end of the day, he's going to average 16 and 8 this year, and he'll be second team All Big Ten. It's just, I just don't get excited about Travion Williams,
That's fair. I had a really hard time. Who would you put 5th in this list, right? So you have basically Franz, Travion, Aaron Henry, Isaiah Livers, Micah Potter, Joe Wieskamp. None of those guys really jump off the page for me. Like I had a hard time. Sorry, I was reading off the wrong list, but I think that was the right group. But none of those guys were really like, man, he's a lock for first team all Big Ten. Where would you fall if you had to take kind of the top of that group?
I mean, I don't think I've been particularly subtle in how high I am on Franz Wagner. I'm not like super high on Michigan, but I am super high on Franz, if that makes sense. Like, I think he's very logically the fifth guy here, and I think he could be better than that this year. If he shoots 36% on threes, he's probably going to be a top 3 player in the league.
Yeah, and so that's where I come back. Michigan's picked 8th or 9th by basically everyone, and we're saying here they have 2 of the top 8 players, 7 players.
Yeah, but I think you can make a real case that maybe Livers could be lower.
That's fair.
Because all right. Here's a question I came up with this morning. So you guys have Isaiah Livers at 8 and you have Aaron Henry at 9. Okay. If I'm giving you blank slate on a roster and you're putting together a team, which of those 2 are you taking?
Who else is on the other 4 spots? I mean, that's a big question, right?
Sure, but they play relatively the same position. Who would you take?
It's a fascinating question because I think they both fit in different situations. If you really lack any sort of defense or playmaking, I think you're taking Aaron Henry. If you have a great ball dominant guard, Isaiah Livers is obviously the pick, right? So I think that's the math of the situation where Henry can do more, but Isaiah Livers can do one thing better than Henry, which is shoot and stretch the floor.
So in the context of this list, so I would take Henry, okay, because I just think he gives you more. And in the context of this list, the variable of the ball dominant guard, both teams had one last year, right?
Don't have one this year.
And don't have one this year. I feel like that more negatively impacts Isaiah Livers than it does Aaron Henry. If anything, Aaron Henry now gets more opportunity. He's going to have the ball in his hands more. We have no idea. Like, I don't see Isaiah Livers being given the ball out top to go do anything. So with Michigan losing Xavier Simpson, I don't know what Isaiah Livers looks like this year, right?
I agree with that.
You have no reason to play off of him at all, really. So, what do his looks look like? And, he can score in transition. He can do stuff, don't get me wrong. But, his bread and butter for a long time, for 2 years at Michigan, was catching passes from Xavier Simpson and shooting the ball. Well, I don't know how much that's going to happen now, right? So I don't know. I think
that's actually not going to happen. I can promise you that Xavier Simpson will not be throwing in passes this year.
So you can make a case, I think, that Henry should be above Livers, and I think you can make a case that Livers could probably be well lower than where he is.
Do you think it's a lock that Aaron Henry is the highest ranked player on a postseason list?
I don't know.
On Michigan State.
Not at all.
So that's where that also kind of threw me for a loop. Aaron Henry is like, both players are they've been really comfortable in a complementary role early in their career. Well, I guess it's been a while now, but they both are going to be asked to do more. You can make an argument that Henry's probably shown more of what he's going to be asked to do, but both guys are going to be asked to do things they haven't done in the 5 years combined they've played college basketball, right? So there's a lot of – they're not safe picks, even for the top 10, I would say.
Yeah, I agree.
That's where I came down, and I'm like, man, you can make a case that, hey, some of these guys who are in the next tier have a real chance to outperform both guys. But I could also say, these are also proven upperclassmen, Big Ten starters on good teams who you look down the list, that's not really what you're dealing with either. So I don't know. It's an interesting debate. I'm not real comfortable with either of them. At what are they at, 7 and 8? Maybe. Like, I could see it going either way.
So just for the sake of this conversation, where we're at, I'm just going to rattle off 11 through 20, just so people kind of have the context here. Because some questions that I have are going to bring in some of these other dudes. So 11 through 20. 11, Marcus Carr, Minnesota. Number 12, Reuvers from Wisconsin. 13, Rocket Watts. 14, Joey Hauser. 15, Ron Harper. 16, Myrion Jones. 17, Demetric Trice. 18, Geo Baker. 19, Eric Hunter. 20, Justice Swing. How'd I do with the name? Swing?
I've said suing, but I don't know how you say his name.
Are you Googling how to say his name?
Yes.
Do they have a
Absolutely.
pronunciation?
Let's see.
It does annoy me when some of these athletic department websites don't have pronunciations on their player profiles. That is low rent to any SIDs out there listening.
Suing.
Suing.
They have an audio of him saying his name. It's nice.
That
Shout
is
out
really
Ohio
nice.
State.
Big time.
So Justice Suing.
Okay.
Cal
so
transfer.
He's at 20. Yes, a transfer from Cal, sat out last year. Okay, so because I want to talk about Micah Potter.
Okay.
So you got Potter at 6, which
is high.
But I mean, I love his game. I love what he brings Wisconsin. I don't think it was in any way a coincidence that Wisconsin was mediocre at best before he took the floor. And obviously there were other roster moves that coincided with that, but he made a huge difference and was part of the reason that was a major reason why they won a share of the conference title. So you also have Reuvers at 12. How can Wisconsin get more out of Potter to actually make him, right, the 6th best player in the conference? Because, like, when I look at those two guys, I don't exactly understand why they don't fit together, like why you can't play them more and make it work. It's not a Kofi Coburn, Georgie Bashadas-Vili situation where, like, you look at them and you're like, it makes sense that this is an issue. When I see Reuvers and Potter, I'm like, those two should be able to play a lot together, and Wisconsin should be rocking and rolling with both of them on the court. So
the big thing last year was, they never played together, this, that, and the rest. They can't play defense together. I think you have to remember that Micah Potter came into the team in the middle of the year. Mm-hmm. So they'd been playing a certain way. His minutes went up and up and up as the season went on. They won more and more games. They've had a whole offseason to make it work, so to speak, right? Like they can think about this, and then they know they have to plan it. I don't think I agree with you. They can play minutes together. And Potter was really damn good last year when he played. Like, I just don't see it being as big of an issue as people say. If this Wisconsin team is going to be the team that wins the Big Ten, like they're picked by many people, I mean, Potter's going to be a huge part of that. Who's the best player on Wisconsin? It's not Nate Reuvers. I mean,
right.
I don't know. So that's where I came back. Like, he's the upside guy on that team. He changed that team. I think it'd be foolish to not build around him this year as a senior. And I don't think that staff is foolish. I think that's what you're going to have to do, even if I know his defense and everything else, he's going to get better on defense. I don't know. So I'm in on him being a top 10 player in the league. I think he's the best player on that team. I think he makes that team dynamic in a way that no one else really does. So if you take him out, it's just a bunch of good players who are pretty good on defense.
Yeah.
And kind of muscle around and maybe score a few points if they're having a good day. He makes it so much tougher to guard. I'm in on him. I get the idea that, maybe he won't play that much. Maybe you want to make that case, sure. But if they're good, it's going to be because of Potter.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, like, I do think that he is, like, clearly, like, a top shelf guy. Like, I would definitely put him above the guys that you have him over. So I do agree with it, but it's just also that if he's playing 20 minutes a game, then he probably won't be the 6th best guy in the league.
Yeah, he's going to have to play more.
Right.
I think it'd be silly to say, he only played that much last year when he came in the middle of the year. He's not going to play more this year. I know it's where I'm at with it. Do you want to talk about the big snub that people said was criminal?
I mean, I think that could be a couple people here, but
the big snub.
I'm guessing it's Joey Hauser.
No, it's Marcus Carr.
Oh, okay.
We got a lot of feedback that it was ludicrous to not have Marcus Carr in the top 10.
Ludicrous. Who are these Minnesota believers getting up in your shit.
Just everyone was in our shit about Marcus Carr. So where are you in on Marcus Carr, leader of the Golden Gophers?
I mean,
he had great stats.
He had great stats. He also had an NBA center, and the team went 8-12 in the league. I mean, now how much of that is coaching? How much of that is Marcus Carr? I don't know, but I don't know. It's that long argument of being really good on a really mediocre team. What's that worth? But yeah, I mean, he's got a ton of game, no doubt. I mean, he can shoot threes. His assist rate was top 25 in the country. Played a ton of minutes. He did make big shots. Like, they won 8 games in the league in part because of him. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, he also did some stuff late in games where you would just, you're freaking out and then you're G-chatting me, yelling about Marcus Carr.
So what's funny to me about this is he's still the highest ranked point guard on the list, which is pretty crazy considering how many point guards we had in the Big Ten the last few years, right? So I don't know what this league really looks like. I guess you could say Dosunmu is a point guard to varying degrees, but the point guard play is sort of just not there in the league because the next one is going to be who? Rocket Watts. Like, you don't have proven point guards. So I get that he's probably in a position where, he is probably the most proven best point guard in the league. But if you say Minnesota is going to go 6-12 or 6-14, whatever, are you really that excited about Marcus Carr as the guy you want to hang your hat on? I'm fascinated because other point guards are gonna come into the picture, right? Like even if you're not a household name right now, if you're starting at point guard for Wisconsin, like Dimitri Trice, all of a sudden they're a top 10 team in the country. People are going to start talking about someone like Trice, who's kind of just taken for granted at this point. So I thought that was interesting. I can't get that people have been out of shape that he was 11th and not 9th or 8th. Like, I would point out it's not a huge difference, but he is still the highest ranked point guard on the list. I'm just not particularly excited about Minnesota, even with Liam Robbins is now eligible. Like, they have a big guy coming in. Maybe they'll be decent. I can't imagine them being good.
Right. I mean, you're replacing Daniel Oturu, who is arguably the most talented center in the league, with a guy in Robbins who averaged 14-7 at Drake. That's great, and it's good that they got a center to step in who's already played D1 ball, but he's not Daniel Oturu, right? So what does that mean for Minnesota? I don't know. I mean, I agree with you. It's Marcus Carr could very well end the season as the best point guard in the league. That doesn't mean he's going to be first or even second team all conference.
Yep.
It's just the way it happens every year. I would make a kid when I look at guys who could like underperform and overperform, right? Where they're at. I look at Joey Hauser and Ron Harper as guys who I could certainly see overperforming their spots on this list. And then guys who would underperform, like I could see Livers probably not being a second team all league guy, which if you have him ranked 8th, that's would fall in line there, right? I could even see, Trace Jackson Davis being really good, but not necessarily being first team in all league. I don't know, but like right now, I haven't seen him do anything away from the basket. I don't know what the hell Indiana's going to look like, right? What is their spacing going to look like? So yeah, but like, let's talk Hauser and Harper.
Yeah. So Hauser, we had at what? 14?
14.
That's felt pretty fair to me. What is the case that he should be high? Should he be ranked? You said he should be ranked maybe first among Michigan State players. Would you go that far right now?
I think he could be. I definitely think that when you see, like he probably would have been a preseason top 10 guy going into the Big East last year. Right.
Okay. I don't know. I don't follow.
Well, let's just say yes. He would have been. Now he's had a year under his belt of learning Michigan State system, putting on some strength, knowing his role, blah, blah, blah. He's got a shit ton of talent. Like I do think I can imagine a world where we get to January and people are saying, why did we not realize that Joey Hauser was going to be one of the best players in the Big Ten this year?
I think that's, yeah. I mean, I think when I look at Michigan State, what we have Henry at 9th, Watts at 13th, Hauser at 14th. I think all three of those guys are probably not in the top 15, but maybe 2 are in the top 10 at the end of the year. I don't know who. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like it's going to have to separate out a little bit. Like, someone's going to have to be the third guy, and someone's going to have to step into being kind of the main featured scorer in that roster, and how that shakes out. Or maybe they're just all, or otherwise that they're going to end up in this 11, 12, 13 range, because it's hard to be in the
really
top
good, right?
8 if you're like, you'd rather have 3 top 12 players than 1 top 10 player and then a couple average guys, right? So it speaks to kind of what Michigan State is this year, but also for the first time in however long, we don't really know exactly what Michigan State's going to look like offensively, as far as you knew the ball was going to go through Cassius Winston ball screen in the last 2 years, right? So that'll be interesting, just seeing how that all shakes out. I feel like we've talked about Watts on every podcast, but
For sure.
He's probably the most variable player on this. Hauser seems like safe to be in that 10 to 15 range. If he's in the top 7, that changes Michigan State significantly, I think, which is kind of what you're saying.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And who else did I say? Ron Harper?
Yeah, I love Ron Harper.
Where did you have him? You said that you and Alex.
I had Ron Harper at 11th. I'm in on Ron Harper. I think he's the best player on Rutgers by a pretty significant margin. I think he's still getting better. But Rutgers is not really the team that, man, we're going to showcase a first-team all-league guy. Like, he's just going to be really solid. They're going to play hard. It's hard to see him getting that high up on the list, right? Like, is he really going to just go average? Like, you're not scoring points in Rutgers games. You're fighting. So that's part of the problem where I have. It's not like he's going to be – and everyone seems to love Geo Baker.
Who are the people loving Geo Baker? Where's
Andy Katz, I think, is always tweeting on stuff. There's lots of national talk about Geo Baker, which just misses the boat, because Ron Harper is clearly the best player on that team in my eyes.
Undoubtedly. And he was just a bear for so many teams to deal with. His numbers in Big Ten play were kind of erratic, and that's would probably be the biggest case that you can make for keeping him, out at like a 15 or lower. Like, he did kind of go all over the place. He had a couple 2, 3, 5-point games, whatever, in league play, but part of that's the style that they play. He also
there's not many points for the taking in a Rutgers game.
Exactly. He also put up 29 against Iowa, put up 21 against Wisconsin. Yeah, I'm with you. I like his game a lot. He can hit threes. He can play physical ball. He's a big, strong guard. What do you shoot? 37% on threes in league play.
It'll be interesting to see. He's still kind of a 4, and I think he needs to get to be more of a 3 as far as like how you can mismatch them, because I think Rutgers gets stuck playing a little big, which can be hard against kind of perimeter-oriented teams.
Yeah, but I think Eugene Amayori is going to change things, and I think I think a guy like Ron Harper will be a huge benefactor of having a legit big, Big Ten big, right?
No love for Miles Johnson?
I mean, I like Miles Johnson. I actually do like Miles Johnson a lot, but
yeah. So they lose.
Amayori can do he's a pro prospect.
Yeah, he's a top 40 kid. So they lose Yeboah, who it was kind of like Harper and Yeboah were both kind of played the 3-4, but they were both more 4s than 3s, right? So that was always their thing. So it'll be interesting to where Harper fits in as far as the mismatches that they can create, because I think it was easy to you think of the games Michigan played against Rutgers, and Brandon Johns was just raining corner threes because they just couldn't guard that way, right? So I think they need to be a little more versatile defensively to deal with stretch 4 guys. So that'll be interesting to watch as far as this Rutgers team getting better, because they were they gave up a ton of threes last year based on how they played.
Right.
But I love Ron Harper. I guess I don't see like the best case for Ron Harper is less still probably than the best case for someone like Joey Hauser or Rocket Watts, right? Like I can't really see, oh man, Ron Harper's a first team all Big Ten player. It's like, oh, I respect the hell out of that dude. He plays hard. He's a second team all Big Ten guy. He still plays for Rutgers. They won 12 games and made the tournament. It's a great story. Is he really a star? I don't know. He's sort of a star in his role.
I was kind of stunned to see Gio where he was.
He was what, 18, 19, 18? Yeah. It's really hard to pick players this far down the list.
It is. I'm just saying, like, I feel like a lot of people, like, Gio has just been nitpicked, you know, since his freshman year just because of the career that he's had. And, you know, he's kind of been, you know, people joke about him on Twitter and stuff like that. He's kind of been an easy target. But then, like, I remember when I was doing the state of the program on Rutgers for The Athletic and, like, talking to Steve Peichel about it. And he was like, I hear what you're saying, like, on Gio and blah, blah, blah. He's like, but, you know, to anyone that, like, criticizes him or likes to say he's this and that, like, what would we be without that guy last year? And I was like, that's a hell of a good point, man. You know, I mean, he did make big shots. He took a lot of bad shots in his early career because he was on a horrifically bad team. And he was often the, you know, we got to get a shot up somewhere. The ball's in this guy's hand, so he's going to put it up. He's probably far more complete of maybe not complete, but he's probably far more of a well-rounded basketball player than people like to give credit for. Yeah,
and if Rutgers just keeps getting better, I mean, I think Rutgers is a top half team in the Big Ten this year, right? Like pretty consensus-wise. He's the second best player on that team for me. I think they need two players on the list. And you look down, like, there's no one that's really moving the needle down here. There's so many questions with basically everyone that we have in the last maybe 10 spots on the list. And you could easily go and pluck out 5 other players who you could make a case deserve to be in the back half of the list too. So it gets really hard. I think right around maybe Harper, Jones, Trice, like around that 15, 16, 17. Everything beyond that is just up for grabs.
All the guy, like this is the part where it gets into, it's far more easier to make cases against guys being where they are than making cases for, like, this guy should be ranked higher. It's easier to go the other way. For the sake of where we're at in this, number 21 through number 25 is Seth Towns, transfer from Harvard at Ohio State. At number 21, 22 is Jordan Bohannon. Number 23 is Christian
Lander.
That's an interesting phone call. Christian Lander is at number 23, freshman at Indiana. Adam Miller, freshman guard from Illinois, top 50 kid, is at number 24. And the aforementioned Liam Robbins, transfer from Drake at Minnesota, is at number 25. So, like what I was kind of saying, that idea of, you know, making the case for guys to be ranked higher gets harder here. This is also where the unranked players, right, come in, and you can say, I could see this guy being top 25 at the end of the year. So, like I said, Amayori, like, I could see him being a top 25 player in the league this year. Joe Toussaint, Iowa, I could see him being top 25. I could.
No, I could not. So can I just throw out, we had a list that also considered that we can tack on the end. These guys all probably deserve, you could easily make a case for a lot of them. E.J. Liddell, Ohio State, Aaron Wiggins, Maryland, C.J. Frederick, Seth Lundy, Hunter Dickinson, Omarui, and Matty Sissoko. So those guys are all basically, I think you could easily make a case for the last 5 to 6 spots that they have an argument. Joe Toussaint.
I love Joe Toussaint.
You are crazy. I'm sorry, but that's just not the play. He was not good last year.
I liked him.
He shot 40% on twos and 29% on threes.
I like him.
Turn the ball over on a quarter of his possessions, and you're going to hype him up.
I'm not hyping him. I'm just saying guys who could find a way in here and the bottom end of things at the end of this year, who I like.
Yikes.
Okay. Another one that you did not say there.
Who?
If Sean D. Brown.
Okay.
I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that he could end up being a top 25 guy in the Big Ten this year. That would also knock Isaiah Livers down probably a few more rungs. But
is Sean D. Brown for you the consensus third best player on Michigan? This is where I keep coming back to.
It's hard.
In a world where
probably yes.
In a world where Sean D. Brown's eligible, Mike Smith has an okay season, I think you end up just knocking everyone down more than either of those guys or Eli Brooks or anyone jumping into the top 25. It's kind of it turns into more of an Ohio State situation where I think Ohio State, you can make a case their whole rotation, starting lineup is probably in the 20 to 35 range in the Big Ten. Right. But I don't see anyone who's maybe above that. So that's where I kind of come in. I mean, and again, Sean D. Brown waiver still outstanding, whatever.
He's going to get it.
Well, we didn't include anyone that didn't have a waiver. But I don't think I would have picked him as a top 25 player.
No, neither would I. I'm just, if you go back and re-listen to this next, in March,
Here, Joe Tucson, who transferred in January when he could get on the court. Come on, man. That's a terrible pick. I don't know. So should Michigan fans be excited you think Sean D. Brown is the top 25 player?
Why am I not allowed to throw out names?
Or worried that you compared him in the same group as Joe Tucson?
Oh, my God. My favorite category of guys are people who you would put both in the list of guys who could overperform and guys who could underperform. Who, for you, falls on both lists?
Rocket Watts.
Okay. I'd say my boy Joe Wieskamp.
Joe Wieskamp. But he's going to be solid, right?
But top 10 in the league is he? Do you think he could be, if he's a second team all-conference guy, Iowa's going to be really goddamn good.
Yeah, he's probably honorable mention, third team. He has a floor of, there's guys who could be not even honorable mention on this list. Seth Towns, we don't know anything about his health. He hasn't played a full season in years.
Myrion Jones, considering obviously this was made before Chambers got canned, but
correct.
Myrion Jones, God knows, and I wouldn't be surprised if you could list any of those Penn State guards, Brockington, Dredd, Seth Lundy, they could all just end up canceling each other out on a really bad team.
Yeah, I'm not excited about them. Not excited about Liam Robbins. I don't really know why he got the last spot in the list.
Yeah, that was pretty random. That was very random.
We're just covering some bases here. He's going to be a starting center.
I can't believe he took that spot from Joe Toussaint.
Christian Lander has huge bust potential in my eyes.
For sure.
I like him as a prospect, but point guards who transfer up and then are looked at as a savior, it's a slippery slope. I think he'll be a good player,
the point guard position at Indiana since Yogi has been less than fruitful.
Yeah, I think you can make the same case for Adam Miller. It looks sort of a similar case where he's really good, and that's why he's on the list, but he's sort of blocked maybe from a huge role depending on how that plays out. So I could see him maybe not being up to that level. Can we just talk about Ohio State for a second? What do you think of what?
I said, of course, bud.
What do you think of this Ohio State team?
I have no idea. I if I had to bet, it's tough because you I feel like Chris Holtmann gets so much respect, right? Where you're like, yeah, Ohio State will be good.
Should he?
Arguably. Probably.
If it's December, I'm going to respect Chris Holtmann. But if it's February and January, am I going to has he been that good at Ohio State? Have his teams overachieved?
Obviously the 18 team lost in the second round of the tournament was pretty damn good. Probably should have gone further. Last year they would have been a 8 seed? Probably, right?
Yeah, and the year before, let's see what Ken Pom has it with the projected seeds. So last year he has them as a 5 seed. But again, they started 11-1 and then went 1-6 in January, right? The year
right,
before,
but at the same time, like you had the DJ Carton situation. Like there were reasons.
the year before that started 12-1, then went 1-6 in January. That's the other year. So like
Yeah,
I'm
but like
just
they
a
also
little
last
confused.
year they also started 2-6 in the league and finished 11-9.
Okay, I'm just saying it's not like a situation where it's like, oh, it's Bo Ryan,
Sure,
put him in the top 5. Is
That's
it with
fair.
Holtman?
That's fair. No.
They're going to be good defensively. I'm not even sure who the best players are on this team, and their consensus pick basically 5th in the conference. Like they're at the top of that middle tier.
Right.
I'm not quite there yet. I don't know. I think they could be good. I don't think they'll be terrible, but are they clearly better than teams like Rutgers, Indiana, Michigan, Purdue? I don't know. So
I think that's fair. I mean, I think that's a fair take. I'm not in love with Ohio State by any means. You know, like you look at a guy like Suing, that Cal team that he was on was tragically bad. Like you could pick a middle of the road Big Ten player off a roster. Like right now, just like give me like a very random dude in the league from
Joe Toussaint.
Don't give me Joe Toussaint. Oh, so much disrespect. All right. I'll pick a guy off of Ohio State. Like
Dwayne Washington.
Luther Muhammad or like Dwayne Washington could have probably averaged 14 points a game for that Cal team.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And his numbers
how
look
good. How good is he as a Big Ten player in reality? It's a total toss-up. How good is Seth Towns hasn't played in 2 years? Like I know he got recruited by like all the best programs and has a huge upside and all that stuff. But like, was he being recruited by Duke because Duke wanted to build around Seth Towns, or because Duke was like, let's just add Seth Towns, and if he's really good, great, and if not, who cares?
Yeah, I love Seth Towns in high school. When he's played at Harvard, he's been good. So he's a good player.
No doubt.
I don't know if that means he's a all Big Ten first team player, even if he's healthy, though. You know what I mean? Like we're saying they don't have a top 20 player in the league, but they're a consensus 5th pick in the league. They lose Caleb Wesson. They lose Andre Wesson. They lose Luther Muhammad, and they don't really have any centers. So Kyle Young is going to be basically the 5. I don't know. It doesn't make me as excited as it seems to make other people as far as this team being some sort of lock to be a tournament team even.
Right. I mean,
like CJ Walker, okay, he's a fine player. He's not changing things. Dwayne Washington, he's going to hit 5 threes a lot of times, but he's not going to – is he a great defender? And then they lose their best perimeter defender in Luther Muhammad. So
right, they lost their best perimeter team off of they lost their best perimeter defender off of a team that I feel like has a reputation for being a good defensive team. But then you look at the numbers, and they finished 10th in the league in defense last year. Now, some of that probably has to do with Caleb Wesson, but you know, I don't know. I agree with you where like I kind of look at Ohio State's roster and kind of like give the slow shrug, you know?
Yeah, I just would think that there'd be more variability in where they're being picked in the preseason. But it's pretty much 5th across the board by like every like blue ribbon and everything else. So, I mean, they have people like you write for that. So I don't know that we can trust the blue ribbon predictions that much, but
Sure.
Either way, there can be groupthink in this, but I'm just surprised that it's that much of a stretch or a lock.
Yeah.
Like, why is Rutgers not picked above Ohio State? I think they'll be a better team. Is that crazy?
No,
Will I
I think
regret saying that? Probably.
I don't know if you had Ohio State jerseys on Rutgers, they'd probably pick 5th.
Exactly. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. You know, I'm just looking at the end of this list here to see if there's anything else. Like, yeah, there's a lot of shrugs here. You know what I mean? Eric Hunter.
What do you think? I think Eric Hunter is going to be good.
I know you love Eric Hunter.
Do I love Eric Hunter? I just think that getting the whole No Gel Easton situation out of the way, like building that backcourt around Eric Hunter, I actually think he has a chance to be way higher on this list because I think Purdue probably has a bounce back season, in my opinion. They'll be better than they were last year, at least record wise.
What are the chances we see Stefanovic is still at Purdue, right? He didn't go anywhere.
Yes, he's still there.
Yeah. I like him. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if could have that potential. No?
Yeah. Can we talk about Iowa for a sec?
Of course.
Stefanovic is a good shooter. I mean, maybe he does that thing where he just makes every three-pointer running at full speed around the screen for a year, but
we've seen this happen at
away
Purdue.
from Mackey. Yeah, we have. That's fair.
You know, this has happened with guys who are like identical to him.
I think like Dakota Mathias was way better than him, more versatile than him earlier, but maybe I'm wrong. He could be a candidate. I like some of the young guards they have coming in there at Purdue too. Like I think it's just going to be it's a needed reshuffling of the deck, and I also love when I see tweets of just Matt Painter throwing shade at Matt Harms. Like I saw see some quote on a Zoom call, one of their 7-foot freshmen already rebounds better than Matt Harms. Love to see it. I'm here for all of that all season long.
I will say there is a certain beauty when coaches get to the level of just not give a fuck because they'll never get fired. Matt Harms or Matt Painter is right in that sweet spot right now.
Deservedly so.
Yeah.
We put Jordan Bohannon on the list. Mm-hmm. I don't feel great about that. We were kind of figuring out like CJ Frederick shot the lights out last year. He's going to make that freshman sophomore leap, but Bohannon coming back means he's probably going to get maybe fewer shots, fewer minutes. So I have a hard time figuring out what to expect from Bohannon given his health. But I mean, dude is proven big time clutch shooter. Like if he's healthy, he can change that Iowa team, I think.
Yeah, and like even when he did play last year on like Spike Albrecht level hips, like he wasn't bad, you know.
He wasn't good.
He wasn't good, but he's still like even in the condition he was in, he put up 20 on Texas Tech.
Yeah, he was clearly really struggled though.
Yeah, no doubt. Don't get me wrong.
I mean,
I'm just saying, like, he's good enough, right? That even playing in the state that he was in, like, he put up some numbers, which speaks to like how good of like his level of talent, right? Mm-hmm. And coming into last year, like a healthy Bohannon would have clearly been top 25.
Yeah, exactly. So, but at 23. Off of hip surgery on a team that already is terrible defensively, what does Jordan Bohannon look like? I don't know how I think he's going to have to play, right? I don't know. Like Spike Albrecht, he had his hips when he played at Michigan, but then when he came back with the new hips at Purdue, he wasn't really flying around the court either. So I don't think like a major hip procedure is something you come back good as new, right?
Sure.
Especially I don't know. So I'm just fast. Like Iowa, it feels like they're picked to be this breakout team, but most of the players on the team feel like a known quantity to me. Like, is Joe Wieskamp going to be that much different, or is he still going to stand in the corner and shoot threes? CJ Frederick is just going to shoot threes that come from Luka Garza. Luka Garza is going to average 25 and 20 and make everyone mad, and that's going to be that, right? Like, how's this team different? You think it's a Joe Toussaint breakout year, but other than that.
I mean, well, I think I've said this on this before. Like, to me, it comes back to Wieskamp.
Oh, of course it does.
It like, I feel like he could be, if he just turns into a guy who just starts, you know, playing out of ball screens and making threes and doing all this, that makes them different. Like, I thought he was pretty underwhelming last year. I thought he did not play to his talent level. And I think part of it was that whole team was trying to figure out all year how to adjust to Garza being this ridiculously high usage dude, but, you know, taking how many shots a game did he take last year? Like, I imagine
all of them.
After Wieskamp entered into, you know, gave serious thought to the draft the summer after his freshman year, coming back as a sophomore, he probably envisioned himself being far more of the focal point of that team. And by like week 2, it was clear they were just going to feed Garza until they couldn't feed him anymore. So I think it kind of took a level of adjustment, and maybe now a year into this thing, he can fit what Iowa is into his game more. And if he does, then they could be like top 10 in the country good.
Iowa had the 5th best offense in the country. So is Joe Wieskamp running a few ball screens a game, which Iowa doesn't really even do? Is that going to change? Like, are they going to become a way better team by being better on offense? Or
I mean, that's a fair point, but
like
they ain't going to fucking stop anyone. So yeah, they need to be like the number 1 ranked offense in the country.
Okay, that's fair. And I could see maybe being like, I mean, their games are going to be must watch TV. Like,
yes,
they're going to be in the 90s, like every night, I feel like. But I just keep coming back to that idea. Like, how much better can they get by just being better offensively? Because I do think you can make a case that they'll be better on offense with Bohannon. Wieskamp can shoot closer to 40% from 3, even if he's the same guy. He didn't shoot it great. And they were this offensive juggernaut. But, man, you got to get some stops somewhere. They were the 3rd worst defense in the Big Ten. Like, It's hard to be that bad on defense. And no one's coming in that's going to make them better defensively. They have a guy coming off hip surgery back in the rotation. How's that going to make you a better defense?
I need to talk about Ayo DeSumo.
Okay.
We're going way back up to the top of the list here. I feel like you could certainly make a case that Ayo could be number 1. And I certainly think you can make a case that Ayo might disappoint a little bit this year. And here's my reasoning. The 3-point numbers scare the hell out of me, for 1. And 2, sometimes I get like a little uneasy about guys who have a year like he had last year when he just made so many ridiculous shots where you're like, is that really replicable year over year? And it could very well be. Like, I love Ayo DeSumo, right? I think he's a phenomenal player, but this is all just kind of for the sake of argument, right? But like, you look at those 3-point numbers, he went from 35% to 29% freshman to sophomore year, and on like far fewer attempts. I think he's, let me pull this up, 142 attempts as a freshman, 93 as a sophomore. Like, you never see that out of a guard whose role expands, take fewer threes, is very rare. So I don't know. I mean, if it's the system Iowa or Illinois runs. I don't know what it is, but that is like a red flag to me. And then, is he going to make 6 buzzer beaters this year again? If those shots don't fall, do people start saying Iowa's a disappointment? You know what I mean?
So absolutely agree that Illinois won a lot of close games last year. He hit a lot of big shots. They overachieved how good they were, right? They won more games than they probably should have. So they were what you call like a lucky KenPom team. My case that they could actually, so I think they have fail potential, like sort of bust potential this year. Like, I wouldn't say they're a lock to win the Big Ten, even though I really like their upside. I think they do have bust potential. What I look back to is I think they're going to have more shooting this year, and I think they just really needed it around him last year. Adam Miller, shooter, top 40 freshman, right? Like, he's going to shoot threes. That'll help. I think the 2 transfers that sat out last year, Hutcherson and Grandison, are both like 6'6" guys who I think both can shoot it a bit. If
or
they
at least give you spacing. Like, it might not be okay.
They didn't have that. They had Trent Frazier, who would kind of sit 30 feet from the basket and chuck up a 3 occasionally, but they had so many guards that couldn't shoot, and they all played hard as hell. They did this, but I think if you can have real shooting around DeSumo and Kofi, all of a sudden that team has a lot more offensive upside that they just didn't have last year. If you look back, they ranked 312th in 3-point volume. So they just didn't shoot threes, and they're 310th in 3-point accuracy. I think they can be better with good shooters around DeSumo more than him needing to make threes, right? His elite talent is being able to put the ball on the deck and just blow by you. And they came up with ways for him to do that, I think, more effectively in the Big Ten. I do think Underwood's a good coach. I just think they need to play small at the 4 with one of those transfers, not with this whole Georgie Bashanesvili thing. And they need to just make some threes and really see if this thing can work. Because even Trent Frazier, he's their shooter. He shot 29% last year. So that's where I come in. And if those guys can't play or Adam Miller can't make threes, like I do think this team has the potential to kind of underachieve, and it'll look like DeSumo just chucking up shots because that's kind of what it was last year. He just made a bunch of big shots. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, so what do you do with Georgie?
I'm shocked he didn't transfer.
Me too. Like now, is he just a 15-minute a game backup 5? Like what does this mean for him?
I think that's what he should be. I think you hope that Hutcherson and Grandison, one of them can be like a Kipper Nichols who makes threes and you just play small. That's what I think is best for them. You have Kofi in the middle, so you don't really worry about getting beat up inside. So I think you space the floor around that. They really pivoted away from Underwood's spread offense, but 3 years ago, however long it was ago, when he was at Oklahoma State, that spread offense had the best offense in the country when they were shooting the shit out of the ball from 3 against Michigan, if you remember that game, right? So I like –
But look at the point guard he had, too.
Yeah, I like that he was able to change and kind of figure this out. And I think that bodes well for the future. I think that he's not an idiot. He's going to look and say, man, if we could make or take any threes last year, we would have been in a much better spot. And a lot of guys I don't really trust to make an adjustment like that midseason or preseason, but I think Underwood has shown that maybe he will. So I'm a little intrigued with some of that upside too. Like Iowa is going to do the exact same thing. They're not going to change. They're going to play offense the same way. They're going to play some crappy zone. They're going to press randomly when they're down 25 and then win. It's just like that's what it's going to be. I could see Illinois, if the chips fall right, being kind of a more complete team, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. So before we get out of here, we're just going to kind of rattle through the breakdown here. So on this list, Iowa, Illinois, Michigan State, and Wisconsin each have 3 players. And I think many would say that those are clearly the top 4 teams in the league. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Right?
Okay. People on my side get real mad when you include Michigan State in that top tier, but I would certainly include them in that top tier. I'm not going to bet against the guys who won 3 in a row.
The 3 straight league championships. Yeah, I think you can make a case for them to be top 4. Indiana, Michigan, Purdue, Rutgers, Minnesota, and Ohio State each have 2, and our friends at Penn State have 1.
So that's, for those keeping track at home, 0 for Northwestern, Nebraska, and Maryland. Maryland.
I would not be shocked if Maryland ends up with somebody here. They do have talented players.
Maybe. Yeah. I think Wiggins would be the guy you look at from Maryland, but it's going to be a tough. I mean, you're talking about a team that shared the Big Ten last year, and now we're saying they don't have a top 25 player in the league. It's going to be a interesting fall.
Yes. So you went through and looked at all the preseason rags, right?
Yes.
And kind of did a consensus.
Yeah,
ranking?
I averaged them out essentially.
So first, what were the magazines or whatever you went through, or outlets, I should say?
Blue Ribbon, Lindy's, 3-Man Weave, CBS. I pulled John Rothstein's, and then I pulled CBB Central, and then Bart Torvik's kind of preseason computer rankings to see the difference.
So that's like a good look. I mean, I like the kind of very different vantage points you're coming at. So what I actually haven't seen this post, so I'm interested. Let me pull this up while you're going through it.
Yep. So I can start. So I think it basically boiled down into 4 tiers, really 3 tiers. There are a couple kind of on the edge, but the first tier, like we said, Wisconsin, Illinois, Iowa, and Michigan State, in that order, were pretty much the consensus top 4. They all averaged out to at least like a 3.5 or better in kind of their average rank. I don't think there's much debate there. I think Wisconsin should be the pick to win the league, and they were the highest rated team overall. Do you agree with that?
Yes. Would I pick Wisconsin to win the league? No. Is it probably makes sense that for them to be picked to win the league? Yes.
Fair. The second tier is a little more interesting, where you get into, I think this is kind of the group I would say in the NCAA tournament picture, right? Ohio State was the consensus fifth pick basically across the board. Rutgers, Indiana, Michigan make this group, and then Purdue and Minnesota are sort of right there on the edge. As far as they're not in that bottom tier of Maryland, Penn State, Northwestern, and Nebraska, but they're more than an average point behind the 5 through 8.
Yes. So when you look at this ranking or whatever you want to call it, who do you think has best case to overperform and underperform?
I think Michigan's interesting to me because I find it unlikely that they'll be just sort of like a run-of-the-mill ninth best team in the league. I think they probably have more upside than that. If Sean D. Brown's eligible, all these things happen, right? Like, I think they could be a top 5 team in the Big Ten. Whereas like Indiana or Rutgers, maybe I don't see as much, like they're not, like, I don't think they have as big of a chance to be great. Ohio State is the team I'm skeptical of most in that middle tier that I think could drop a bit, right? I don't think Ohio State's clearly better than Rutgers, Indiana, Michigan, even Purdue.
Yeah, I would say of the overperform teams, like just logic-based, like you always look at Purdue. If you see Purdue in the bottom half of the league, it's just, you know what I mean? Like, would anyone really be surprised if Matt Painter figures out a way to have his team finish 6th or 7th?
No.
You know what I mean? Like,
I completely agree with you on Purdue.
Yeah.
Shout out to the 3-man weave who picked Purdue 5th in the league, which is going out there. And everyone else was way down on Purdue. So they were pulling them up for closer to teams like Michigan, Indiana.
And it does make sense. You know what I'm like, average person out there can't name more than one player on Purdue. So your instincts are just going to be to stick them at below all the programs that you can name guys on. You know what I mean? You talked about Chris Holtmann just giving Ohio State a bump. Purdue deserves that bump way more than Ohio State does, right? Like, if you're really looking on this list, who are the coaches that you trust? Like, man, they're going to be fucking solid, right? Purdue, Michigan State. Those are the proven coaches at this point because we've had some like turnover in the league, right? You're not just saying, oh, well, Brad Underwood, they're going to be a lock to make the tournament and be a contending team. I don't know what to do with Greg Gard. Like, maybe he's still got some of that Wisconsin juju, but not really the same extent, right? So, I feel like for me, my underperformed team is kind of Wisconsin. And you're about to make the point that like it's a senior laden Wisconsin team. Like, you can't bet against it. I feel like there's a difference between betting against the team and picking a team to win a conference. Like, I can say Wisconsin's going to be good and still say that they're going to underperform expectations, right? Like, that's fair. Because at the end of the day, I always come back to the fact that Wisconsin was never as bad as they were last year, and they were never as good, I think, as they were in the last month of the season when they just couldn't miss. They shot like 45% as a team on threes. It was just stupid. Like, that's not transferable for over the course of an entire season. So like, if I had a bet, I say Wisconsin probably finishes like 4th, 3rd in the league. And that's still good. That's still really good. They're still going to be a top 20 ranked team and be a 4 seed, 3 seed in the NCAA tournament, right? But like, I just don't see Wisconsin winning the Big Ten this year.
I see your logic, and I think it's easy. It's a great strategy to look, like, if you could bet on college basketball futures, look at a team that shot the lights out from 3 and all of a sudden everyone thinks they're good. That's a prime spot to sort of regress. But man, I'm not going to get excited about picking Illinois or Iowa to win the league.
I agree.
So, and I'm not really excited about Ohio State, Rutgers, Indiana, or Michigan to win the league. So you look at Michigan State, fine. I'm still not sure how that's going to all work out there,
I
right?
mean,
So
picking a team that lost Cassius Winston and Xavier Tillman to still win a league is, and we can sit here and say Michigan State won 3 straight Big Ten championships. They also had the same starting point guard for all 3 of those Big Ten championships.
Exactly. And Xavier Tillman was the best defensive big in the league for the last 2 years, basically. So then I come back to, well, I know Wisconsin is going to be solid. They're going to win double-digit Big Ten games. I'm pretty confident in that based on just the rest of the league. And
sure.
So that's where I come back. But I agree that they are in a position to underachieve. I like Illinois more as a team that I can see actually being better than they were last year, but they're going to need to be better if they want to win the league, right? Like, I don't know. So it's weird at the top, and we've just had basically a consensus the last couple of years that we knew the good teams in the league like beforehand. Michigan State everyone picked them last year. The year before, just about everyone picked them, and then I picked Indiana like an idiot. I think the fact that Fran McCaffrey and Brad Underwood are at the top of the table to start before the season starts means we're going to have some chaos, right? If Iowa's really the best team in this league, it's going to be chaotic as all hell. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, like when I look at it, to me, you want to go guards when it comes to college basketball, and at the end of the day, like, I would assume it was the best guard in the league, so it makes the most sense to pick Illinois. But like, then I just get scared off because you made that point. Like, they won so many games last year that they probably shouldn't have won. And how good are they? Right? I don't know. But it might be the safest pick to win the league.
Sounds to me like you're picking Michigan State to win the league.
I think I'm gonna go Illinois 1, Michigan State 2, Wisconsin, Iowa.
Feeling good about Foster Lawyer's preseason. Might bump them up, though.
It's true. No, I do think like Michigan State would be. I don't even know if they put like, couldn't place a bet if I wanted to, but I would say if there were something like, Big Ten odds available, and with all this hype around Wisconsin, Illinois, Iowa, and Michigan State's just sitting there, like, it would be a high value pick, I feel.
Yeah, Michigan State would be a value pick, and Purdue would be the big value pick.
Yeah.
If you like, those would be the two futures.
And no one's talking about Michigan. And I agree with you that like their upside's pretty darn high. If things fall in place, like, and Hunter Dickinson's legit, they could be really damn good. And certainly be a team that like going into February, we're like, we probably should have seen this coming more. You know what I mean?
Yeah, mostly because I think we both agree that Franz Wagner can be a first-team All-Big Ten player.
Correct.
And a lot of other teams just don't have a guy that you're like, man, he's going to be a first-team All-Big Ten.
But you just want to see them play a game without Xavier Simpson. And we did last year at Nebraska. And, they looked.
It was Nebraska.
It was Nebraska, right. And if they had played anyone else that night, it probably would have been an L. So, all right, we got to wrap it up because I have to jump on a different podcast.
Busy man.
Going over to the beat to contribute nothing to a podcast about the Michigan State football game this weekend. So just doing what I do. Dylan, thanks.
Glad you can have value.
Thanks for a solid hour of hoops, man. This was a good distraction.
Yeah.
Do it again next week?
Yeah, we promised people we were going to do a pod every week, and then we skipped a week. So
whatever.
Good job.
All right. Blame me. Well, that'll do it, folks. Make sure to tip those bartenders and servers. We'll talk to you next week.